welcome to From the Ground Up. My name is John Boitnott, and every so often here on this Grit Daily supported podcast, we talk to entrepreneurs about the companies that they are building, how they're building them, and their missions in the world, what they're doing to help in the world. Today, I'm joined by Alex Smereczniak of Franzy. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Good, John. How are you doing? I appreciate you having me on the show today.
It's my pleasure. Great to have you. Tell me a little bit about your background and what Franzy's all about.
Absolutely. So I'll try to give you the short version, which is getting increasingly hard as the story goes on and more chapters are written. But um, I'm originally from Minnesota, ended up in North Carolina for school, went to Wake Forest down here, and that's where I really got into entrepreneurship. I did a college laundry and dry cleaning business on campus called Wake Wash. And learned more doing that business than any class I took on campus. It's just getting your hands into a business and that practical skill you can't really replicate. So after running that, I sold it for sold it a couple of years later. Did 2 years of management consulting at Ernst& Young. Loved the people, but hated the work that I was doing there, and knew I was bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. And so I saw all these like Uber for X businesses popping back up. It was Instacart and Shipt and Wag and Rover. And I thought, someone's going to figure this out for laundry and dry cleaning. Why not me? I did it in college. Let's see if I can do it outside of college. And so we launched a business called 2U Laundry in January of 2016. And it was laundry and dry cleaning delivered, but for mostly dual income families with kids, mostly mom, making that purchasing decision. And over the last 8 years, really just had trials and tribulations with that business, scaled it, pivoted, went through COVID, went through all sorts of, kind of different business cycles. And what we ultimately ended up doing there was we started vertically integrating and building our own laundromats with Electrolux. And again, thought this would be just pickup and delivery at first, but started building those locations and it worked incredibly well. So we thought we should build a ton of these, but they're 1.5 million each to build. We don't have that kind of money to
Oh,
to
right. Yeah,
do
yeah.
to do to do hundreds of these. And so that's where we landed on franchising. Could we franchise the brick and mortar, layer our pickup and delivery business on top? Everyone wins. And we concepted that brand Laundrolab in 2021. We've sold 116 units. We've got 26 stores open today. And the reason I'm sharing all this is it kind of comes full circle back to Franzy and what I'm working on now. But as I got into the franchise industry, realized that most brands don't have a ton of internal resources. They don't have a full-blown marketing team. They don't have all these resources. And so when they start to sell licenses to prospective franchisees, they end up working with business brokers, franchise brokers, et cetera, and they end up paying a 60% commission to those folks to sell their concept to prospective franchisees. And so what I'm trying to do with Franzy now is, can we do what Zillow's done to real estate, what Expedia did for travel? Can we do the same thing for the business buying process, starting with franchising, where people can go do all the research they want, see all the data on the businesses that are out there, see what they can afford, get qualified for lending, and buy their own business.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it comes down to why franchising? Like, we're seeing a surge in people wanting to leave their 9 to 5 jobs or diversify investments. Why is franchising a good option?
Yeah, so I think, franchising, it represents about 20% of all businesses out there, which is a lot if you think about it. It's 8% of our country's GDP. So it's this huge, it touches everything, food, hotels, et cetera. And the reason I think that is it's just more accessible. I think starting something from scratch is scary, it's intimidating. A lot of people don't know where to start. And I think franchising allows people to be entrepreneurs, to be their own boss, et cetera, without having to have some, completely original idea that you start from absolutely zero. This lets you start from square five instead of square one. You've got a team supporting you, a proven brand. And so I think franchising, to answer your question, is just a lot more accessible and kind of a cheat code into business ownership.
Now you're using AI. I guess there's the Franzy Fit Score. To describe what the Franzy Fit Score is, AI, how that relates to people being able to pick out the franchise that they want.
Yeah, so kind of like how Zillow has the Zestimate, what we're doing is we have 3,000 brands worth of data from what's called an FDD, a franchise disclosure document. And so we have this huge data set on all these brands, what they cost to get into, how many hourly employees you need to have, how many have opened, how many have closed, so all this data. And what we do is as soon as users, who are looking for a franchise to buy start coming to our site, we also start collecting data on them, what their net worth is, what their household income is, how many years have they managed employees before, what are their goals, what are their interests. We take all this data on the brands we have, we take all this data we have on the prospects, coming to the site, and we let AI do its magic. It starts to learn, who is John? What's he looking for? Here's this massive data set that we have, and we start serving up, highly relevant, curated brands that we believe not just fit you from an interest perspective, but also what's going to help you accomplish your financial goals and address your risks and hesitations that you have about business ownership.
And of course, that'll be some data that you're able to, use along the way to, offer as a product at some point, or who knows exactly what that looks like, right?
Absolutely, yeah. As long as it's helpful to our customers, we'll use it and put it to good use. And I think some people get freaked out by that. I love when I go online and I see stuff that's like exactly what I'm looking for and it saves me time. I'm like, yep, I was actually just needing that, and click, 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 and I've got it, and I'm good to go. Some people don't like that, but what we're trying to do here is um, de-risk that whole process of buying a business and make sure you're getting into the right one if you do decide to make that decision.
What advice, so in general, for people possibly looking for franchising opportunities, what are some advice you'd give someone who is considering a franchising investment in today's economic climate?
I think the first thing that came to mind was I would treat it like finding a spouse, right? It's a huge decision. It's not one that's, temporary. It's one of the longer life decisions you're going to make, one of the most impactful life decisions you're going to make. And so I think it's okay to take your time. Don't set this arbitrary thing of I'm X years old. I need to quit my job tomorrow, or I had a bad year at work or a bad week at work. I need to do this right now. I think be thoughtful, and kind of like when you find the perfect life partner, when you find the perfect business, I think you'll know and you'll feel it and you'll have done your research. And so the first piece of advice I think is just make sure you do your homework and go through the dating process with a number of different brands until you find the best fit for you.
What are some of the things that make uh, I'm not too familiar with the franchising, arena realm, but what are some of the key things that people are going to want to look out for if they want to find a franchise, that makes them the right fit, the right new marriage?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of like dating again. Everyone has their own preferences on, what they like and what they're going for. For example, in franchising, some people want super safe and hey, they've got 100 units already open. I might not have as much opportunity to grow a ton of locations because they have so many open already, but I know if I can get one or two of them, it should be steady and fairly risk, more for a risk averse individual. There's others that say, I want to find a brand that has less than 10 open because then I can go open 20 of them and I got these big dreams and ambitions and I'm an aggressive person, and I want to you know, go for gold basically. And so the answer is I think it depends, but I think the big risk factors to look out for are, do the brands have multiple locations open, at least five, that they have good revenue, predictable revenue? Do they have stores closing quickly? If they do, that means those early, stores opening didn't perform at the level that they wanted them to, or the franchisee didn't want them to. And so looking for store closures, looking for more mature brands, and then making sure that you're talking to existing franchisees of those brands. They can tell you the experience that they've had, what's worked well, what hasn't. And that's really, I think, a critical part of the process is talking to existing franchisees of the concept you're looking at, becoming an owner of.
Yeah, I mean, so is this a situation where you would be the person who's in charge of the new franchise only, or is there sort of one thing that we are seeing a lot out there is sort of the crowdfunding type aspect of different, like real estate, things like that, where you can crowdfund and be one of several hundreds or thousands of people who invest in a property or a parking garage or whatever it may be. Is this is this sort of related to possible crowdfunding as well, or tell me your thoughts on how that is related, if at all.
It's a great question. I think like every asset base is starting to get like syndicated or
Yeah.
fractionalized. And I think franchising is absolutely ripe for it. People that might love Jimmy John's, they're diehard Jimmy John's fans, but they don't
Yeah.
want to own a whole one, or they might not have enough cash to own a whole one. But could they put 25K into owning a Jimmy John's, and
Yeah.
they go brag to their friends, I own part of that Jimmy John's over there.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's coming, and there's some companies out there starting to do it. There's a one called Fran Shares
Mhm.
that's doing some of that now. I think for our platform, we plan to do it someday as well too. Because if you think about it, we're getting all this information on potential operators, and there are going to be hundreds of operators that are phenomenal at what they do, but they might not have the cash to do it. So why can't we go raise a pool of capital to go support that operator and all bet on that person and the brand and give them the opportunity to run that business on our behalf with some sweat equity, and then
Yeah.
us all have, as fractional owners, put 20K in or 50K in or whatever it is that you want exposure to. So I absolutely think it's not readily available today in franchising, but I think it could head that way, and we certainly want to build a product that allows people to do that.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you about the next 5 years, and I was wondering sort of how that might tie into the next 5 years of franchising, and just if that's possible. And then also, like, what are some of the other things that you're seeing about the franchising industry next 5 years? Sort of your outlook on what that looks like.
Yeah, so for us, some of our roadmap is at first get really good at pairing people with the best fit brand for them, the lowest risk, highest upside, opportunities for what their goals are. And if we can get really good at that, it allows us to add all sorts of other services, help you get lending, help you open create your entity and form your entity when you start, open a bank account, all the things that you need as a new business owner. There's a lot of different events that happen at that moment. And so can we be a source to provide referrals or other relationships,
Mm.
that help you solve for those things? So that's, one iteration. We eventually then want to get into that pairing capital with operators with the right brand. So not just person to brand. It would be you're a good operator, but you don't have the capital. You have a ton of capital, but you don't want to operate three, restaurants. Let's pair all these people together and, you know, create a unique opportunity that might not happen organically on its own. And then beyond that, I think there's an opportunity to go to resale businesses, so existing franchise locations where
Mm.
someone's 7 years into it and they want to resell it. There isn't a marketplace for that either.
Mm.
And then eventually all offline businesses. Um, and then specifically, you asked the question about, where's franchising in general going? I think a really interesting thing that might start happening more is what Chick-fil-A is doing, where it's
Mhm.
kind of a pseudo franchise. A lot of people don't realize to get into a Chick-fil-A, it's only 10 to 15 grand to do it.
Really?
Whereas that store probably costs 3, 4 million to build. Chick-fil-A covers all the build out costs. They find the site, they do everything. But instead of taking a 6% royalty, which is kind of standard in franchising, they take like half of the revenue. So they take a
Right.
huge chunk.
Yeah.
But the average Chick-fil-A franchisee makes $700,000 a year. And so everyone still
Yeah.
wins. And I
Is
could
that all?
see,
I would have thought for yeah, that sounds about right. But I remember reading that an article that described how many, In and Out, all these different. I know you're on the East Coast, you don't have In and Out, but that's sort of, a big one over here. But like, I I've always gotten the impression that you'd make more per year than just 700,000. I feel like these restaurants make each of them 700,000 a week, but and it's kind of neither here nor there. But anyway, that's interesting that it only that a Chick-fil-A only makes 700,000 a year. I would think it would
well,
be
so that's profits, like what the franchisee takes home. They probably do 4 or 5 million a year in revenue, 3 to 5 million a year in revenue.
right.
Chick-fil-A takes a big chunk of that, and but the franchisee to get into that don't have to pay for the store, don't have to set up anything else. They have to operate it. Only 15K to get in, and they have a job or a business that pays $700,000 a year. I mean, that's you talk about the American dream, and
Yeah.
if you can come up with 10 to 15K and work your butt off. Chick-fil-A gives that opportunity. And I
Mm,
think more businesses will follow the Chick-fil-A model where they say, hey, this is kind of a franchise, but it's also a blend of like a corporate location where we front all the money, we go help do all of the site selection, build out. You just got to be a good operator. And if you're willing to do that, you can now get access to concepts you might not have ever been able to afford on your own originally.
yeah. That's incredible. It seems like there's just it's really ripe for a lot of different opportunities. Well, let's get into some advice for entrepreneurs on how they can, what they can learn from you about how to start their own businesses and build up their own businesses. Now you have the experience with, I think you said it was two U Laundry and Laundry Lab. How did the experience with, you talked a little bit about this, but tell me a little bit more. How did what you learned from those, working on those products, prepare you for Franzy and help you build out Franzy more?
I mean, the second time around, the analogy I've used is it feels like if you ran, a marathon or a sprint with a backpack full of bricks on,
Oh my
and the
God.
second time around is like you're running without it, and you just feel so much lighter, and the network you've built up is so much, faster, and things move quicker. But the lessons I think that I've learned that I'm, deploying now is progress is definitely better than perfect. I think early on we tried to perfect everything and it dragged everything out. And the one thing none of us have a lot of is time, and especially in a business when resources are limited, capital, the amount of time that you have early on, especially with a small team, you have to move quickly and make decisions quickly and be okay with it being a 70% solution. I mean, we soft launched a week ago and there's bugs everywhere. It's 65, 70% built, but we're getting tons of feedback, tons of interest. People are starting to talk, the word's getting out, and I think we're better for that than waiting 3 more months for it to be perfect and potentially build the wrong thing. So that's a big one is just take action, go quickly. Progress is better than perfect. Um, then also just not being afraid to ask for help. I mean, I think part of the reason that we move so quickly now is the network we have. The network we have is because we're good at thoughtfully reaching out to people and saying, "Hey, I have this idea. You're an expert at it. You've done it 15 years longer than I have. Are you willing to jump on a phone for 15 minutes?" And I can't tell you how many people are willing to spend time if you thoughtfully reach out. I've had Mark Cuban respond to me, Grant
Really?
Cardone. I mean, like crazy successful people will take their time if you reach out with a thoughtful question. Sometimes a little bit of persistence helps too, but if you reach out thoughtfully, I think people are willing to help and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. Any other key lessons from the transition from the first round of entrepreneurial ventures to this one now? Any other key lessons?
I think surrounding yourself with the best people too. Someone told me early on, eventually you're going to hire the best people and they're going to run your company for you. And I was like, no, that's not true. But I've seen it as you scale that it, there are people that are exceptionally good at what they do, and you will never, no matter how many hours you try to, it's not a good use of your time to try to become the best at each function. Your time is better spent going and finding the individuals who are the best at that function, and then coordinating all the pieces together and sticking to what you as an individual are good at. And so for me, that's relationship building and strategy. And so I spend most of my time there and I go find the best people for the things that I'm terrible at and compliment myself as much as I can.
All right, great. Those are great pieces of advice. What has surprised you the most in your process of making Franzy this time around? What are your biggest surprise that you've dealt with as an entrepreneur?
I think we talked about it a little bit, but the speed, was not expecting for things to go as fast as it has been. Um,
I feel like the speed has increased even like getting covering startups for like 10 to 15 years. Like it was fast and now it's just really breakneck pace. Your thoughts?
What completely, I mean, what you can do. So I think you nailed it. I mean, what used to like to build a website before, you had to have servers and like physical infrastructure, and that was costly and took time. And then these tools got built, like WordPress sites and other, website builders allowed people to go quicker and with less resources and less money. And those have only gotten better. And there's a software for everything now: email, marketing, operations, training, document management, signature. I mean, all of it has a software that you can just plug and play on day one. And with AI and what it's been able to do is, it now allows one person to do 5 different roles at once, whereas before you just couldn't, possibly comprehend doing something like that without a small army or a small team of people. And so that the speed has been just shocking with all the tools that are out there,
Mm.
the learnings from the first one. That's been the most surprising part is just how fast you can go now.
All right. Yeah. So the next, we'll sort of wrap it up with anything you feel like you have not had a chance to mention. Go ahead and mention now, and also just sort of give me sort of a preview of the next 6 months in your sort of building Franzy from the ground up. What are some of the things that you guys will be doing for the next 6 months?
Yeah, so this with the soft launch last week, our goal the next month and a half is really iterate quickly on the first, version of the product, our MVP, the minimum viable product, is to get as many users to the site as possible, hear their feedback, see what's breaking, see what's working, continue to improve on it. And then over the next 6 months, our goal is really, we use OKRs, it's objectives and key results to drive business decisions and how we all are rowing in the same direction. Our main focus is how do we match, you know, our goal initially is 180 people with the best fit concept for them. And they're providing us satisfaction back. They're saying they're happy that it was a good decision, it was the right brand for them, so that our matching function is working at the highest degree possible. The next 6 months is really just get as much awareness as we can, get Franzy out to the world, get feedback, build a better product, and ultimately match people with the best fit brand for them.
Anything else you'd like to mention about Franzy and about what people can, how people can get the most out of using the platform?
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, if you've ever thought of being an entrepreneur or business owner, definitely check out what we're doing. The website's www.franzy.com and play around. Honestly, there's pre-qualification tools, there's comparison tools, there's the Franzy Fit Score, and use the AI to see what it recommends and see if it resonates with you. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, give us that feedback. Um, we want to talk to anyone who's willing to share the experience that they've had and what's working for them and what's not. And so that's the last thing I'd ask is if you do check it out, don't hesitate to email us, fill out the contact us form, any of the above. We just want to hear from you.
Awesome. Alex, with Franzy and the Franzy Fit Score, great to have you here on From the Ground Up.
Thanks, John.